Welcome into the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Manna. Happy Solo Shot Saturday, everybody. We have an awesome show for you here today. Last year, the first episode on this YouTube channel, before the 2023 season, I did my predictions all in one video, and even I felt like I didn't get to flesh out as much as I would have liked to with this short form podcast format. So I decided to break it up. And because the National League opens up the season first, I will be starting with the National League, breaking down division by division and the players that I like to look at and what I think the storylines for these teams are during the 2024 Major League Baseball season. If you enjoy the show, definitely don't forget to hit that subscribe button and tell a friend that loves baseball just like we do to come tap into the show, both on YouTube as well as where you listen to podcasts. Starting off in the NL East, and I'm going to go bottom to top with these divisions. I think the Nationals are pretty much set to stay in last place. They finished with a 71-91 record last season, and the only additions they really made to this roster were Joey Gallo and Jesse Winker, two guys who were former All-Stars but haven't been good major leaguers for a couple years now. And their storyline is waiting for the kids. James Woods has lit up this whole spring training. He's been one of those spring breakout players that everybody's been keeping an eye on, a 6'7" guy with legitimate power. Dylan Cruz, top pick in the draft this past year. Really young, talented guys coming up in the national system, and they're hoping to reap the rewards of those players. The players to watch, I think, for the Nationals this year, they have two young pitchers in the rotation. Josiah Gray, who was their 2023 All-Star, pitched to a 3.91 ERA, which was good enough for a 110 ERA plus, 10% better than league average in 159 innings pitched. 143 strikeouts, so an 8.1 strikeout per nine guy, not quite a strikeout per inning. But his FIP, which is important, is fielding independent pitching, 4.93, so a whole run worse than what his ERA was. So the statistics show that he may not be quite as good as he was in 2023. On the reverse side, Mackenzie Gore, who was a big piece for them in the San Diego trade, 4.42 ERA last year, 97 ERA plus, so just below league average in 136 innings pitched. But he threw 151 strikeouts, good for a 10 strikeout per nine, and his FIP 4.89. So still not good, but the FIP was lower than Josiah Gray, despite the ERA being a whole half a run higher. And I would not be shocked if Mackenzie Gore outpitched Josiah Gray in 2024. The most exciting player on the Nationals offense last year were Lane Thomas, 268 batting average, 315 on base, 468 slug, hit 28 home runs and 20 stolen bases. It was an actual shock to me that he was not moved at the trade deadline last season. And it'll be interesting to see if he can repeat close to those numbers in 2024. But the X factor for the Nationals season, the reason you're going to tune into Nationals baseball in 2024 is Mr. CJ Abrams, their shortstop, 245 batting average last year, 300 on base, 412 slug, 18 home runs, and the man stole 47 stolen bases in the first year of the new rules. I expect CJ Abrams to have a Bobby Witt-like effect while he's playing on one of the worst teams in Major League Baseball. He is a pleasure to watch day in and day out and a reason for the fans to tap into the Nationals. I have the Mets with the Kodai Senga injury. I have them staying in fourth place. They were in fourth place last year with a 75-87 record. Their key additions this offseason have been Sean Manaea, Luis Severino, Harrison Bader. The storylines for this year are obviously what if Senga pitched all year, because that would change the trajectory of this team to maybe being third place in the division, and Alonso in a walk year. So the players to watch this year for the Mets, they've already sold off some of their older pitchers, but Edwin Diaz is going into his age 31 season, coming off the torn patellar tendon. And he pitched in 2022 to the Trumpets, 1.31 ERA, 32 saves, 118 Ks, good enough for a 297 ERA plus. Yes. Almost 200 times better than league average. Edwin Diaz was unstoppable, and he only has one more year of team control. So if Edwin Diaz can bounce back, he will be a very valuable trade chip for the Mets going into the trade deadline. Tyler McGill is going to get a bigger opportunity last year. He actually led the Mets in games started last year with 25, 4.7 ERA, which was not great. But he has learned a fork pitch from Kodai Senga, which he is dubbing the American Spork. And I think he's going to be much improved. I'm not saying that he's going to have like a 3.5 ERA, but he could definitely be in the low fours, maybe the high threes. And I think he's going to be a value to people in really deep leagues where you start a lot of pitchers or roster a lot of pitchers. So Tyler McGill, named to keep an eye on to see the improvement. Obviously, Francisco Lindor is the best player on this team, future Hall of Famer in my opinion. 254 batting average last year, which was a little below what you like to see from him. 336 on base, 470 slug, and he had the quietest 30-30 season you'll ever see. 31 home runs, 31 stolen bases. He is a absolute monster, and I'm very excited to see him continue to put up crazy stats in his legacy in New York. Pete Alonso, obviously, 217 batting average, 318 on base, 504 slugging percentage in what was considered a big down year. 46 home runs and 118 RBIs. That doesn't grow on trees, people. I'm not saying he's going to get that Aaron Judge contract, but he's going to demand a ransom. And whether the Mets trade him this season or he ends up getting the bag in the offseason next year, Pete Alonso is definitely a name to watch. But the X factor for the Mets this year, as I think they're not going to be in contention, is their young players. Can they become regular, reliable, everyday bats? Francisco Alvarez, a lot of people already would say he is a reliable everyday bat. 25 home runs in 123 games as a rookie catcher. That's very impressive. The underlying numbers about his batting average and strikeouts was not very good. But Brett Beatty and Mark Vientos are also going to get opportunities to play for the Mets almost every day. And I think if two of those three guys can become everyday bats for the Mets moving forward, this season won't be looked at as a complete loss, even if they trade Diaz and trade Alonso, two fan favorites. The Marlins are a really tough team to decipher. Their key additions this offseason were only really Tim Anderson. They actually had a lot of players leave in the offseason. Yuli Gurriel, Joey Wendell, Jorge Soler, who led the team in runs and was second in RBIs. So it's definitely puzzling, and they will not have Sandy Alcantara, the 2022 Cy Young winner, for the entire season, out with Tommy John. But the storylines for this year are Skip Schumacher in year 2. He was amazing as a first-year coach in year 1. And the pitching question marks, which has always kind of been a strength for the Marlins, despite how their team finishes. They've always been able to develop pitching and have a really sound, talented pitching staff. But this year, with Sandy Alcantara out and with Edward Cabrera and Braxton Garrett coming back from injuries, all eyes are going to be on two guys. One who finally put it all together in 2023 in Jesus Luzardo with a 3.58 ERA, good enough for a 125 ERA plus and 178.2 innings pitched. He threw 208 strikeouts, which was good for a 10.5 strikeout per 9, and his FIP was 3.55. So that 3.58 was pretty legit in 2023. And the guy everybody has their eyes on, and who I think is the real X factor for how the Marlins finish this year, if they want to have any chance of coming near that 84 win total from 2023, is Yuri Perez. They're trying to stretch him out into a legit starting pitcher. The man was pitching in the major leagues at 20 years old last year. And the fact that he was doing that with a 3.15 ERA, 142 ERA plus, 91 in only 91.1 innings pitched. He had 108 strikeouts in those innings. That's good for a 10.6 strikeout per 9. The FIP is worrisome. It was 4.11. But when you look at the pitchers that have debuted and pitched at least 85 innings at 20 years old, the majority of names ended up being very good major league starters. So I think Yuri Perez is primed to take that next step. The talent is clearly off the charts, and I think he's going to be the most exciting reason to watch Marlins baseball in 2024. And obviously, you can't talk about the Marlins without talking about the reigning batting champion, Luis Arraez. Despite people thinking he was going to hit 400 last year, he still had a slash line of 354, 393 on base, and 469 slugging. He had over 200 hits and only struck out 34 times. He is an old school slap ball player, and I absolutely love to watch him play. The Phillies got them finishing in second place. They were 90 and 72 last year. The key additions are Whit Merrifield and Spencer Turnbull. And the real storyline is, can this group get over the hump? And I'm not just talking about the Braves, but they came very close to championships the last two playoffs as well. Can this core that Dave Dombrowski has assembled and has paid get the job done and win a championship? I think they're talented enough to, but it's still yet to be seen. The players to watch, like I said, handing out contracts, the two pitchers that got extensions. Zach Wheeler, 3.61 ERA last year, 1.19 ERA plus in 192 innings pitched, struck out 212 batters. That's a 9.9 strikeout per nine with a 3.15 FIP. So Zach Wheeler, one of the best pitchers in the National League. I think he'll be fine. Aaron Nola is a real question mark because despite being consistent, he pitched to a 4.46 ERA last year in 193 innings pitched. 202 strikeouts, good for a 9.4 strikeout per nine, 4.03 field independent pitching. So he was a little bit better than the ancillary numbers suggest, but is he going to trend that way over the next 7 years? I do not know quite yet. Trey Turner looked at as a down season because he had a terrible first half, but he really turned his season around in the second half. Finished with a 266 batting average, 320 on base, 459 slug, 26 home runs and 30 stolen bases, and became the first player in Major League history to steal at least 30 bags without being caught a single time. Trey Turner is a great all-around ball player. He's going to be a big part of the Phillies lineup in 2024. Bryce Harper's first year at first base full time. Last year, he hit 293 with a 401 on base and a 499 slugging with 21 home runs and 11 stolen bases in a shortened season for him. He's going to be getting MVP votes, I believe, in 2024. And the X factor to me for the Phillies is actually Johan Rojas. This is a guy who came on strong for the Phillies last year in 59 games and the playoffs, solidifying their defense in center field. He is a Gold Glove caliber defensive player, and he was very good with the bat, too, in his limited time in the majors last year. 302 batting average, 342 on base, 430 slug, and 14 stolen bases. If they can get a 15 and 30 guy in center field with the team already having speed with Stott and Turner, up the middle, Real Muto steals bags, that could just add a whole nother element to this offense that could potentially give them the opportunity to pass the Braves. But I am not picking anybody to pass the Braves, not yet. They finished 104 and 58 in 2023, a magical season. They added Chris Sale, Ronaldo Lopez, and Adam Duvall very recently to a one-year deal to platoon with Kelenic in left field. And the storylines really is, will they continue to break records or will they regress more to the mean? I think that's a very fair question. They had an amazing season. They're a couple wins away from the Braves franchise record. A lot of guys had their career high in home runs for their team last year. So that's obviously hard to repeat year in, year out. And they had some first-time all-star breakout performances from guys like Bryce Elder and Orlando Arcia that don't look super recreatable. Spencer Strider last year got Cy Young votes, 386 ERA, 115 ERA plus, and 186 innings pitched, 281 Ks, 13.5 strikeout per nine. He's the best strikeout pitcher in baseball. He had a 285 FIP, a whole run lower. So now that he has added a curveball, he's added a third pitch, I think Spencer Strider is in the driver's seat for the National League Cy Young Award, and it is going to be amazing to see what that curveball allows him to do going forward. 300 strikeouts is in the range of opportunities for him. And the X factor to me is Max Fried, because he only pitched 77 innings last year, but a 2.55 ERA and a 1.74 ERA plus with 80 Ks in those innings. He's a really good starting pitcher. And if they can have Strider, Fried, 1-2 locked in the whole year, It's not going to matter if Elder can repeat, if Sale can stay healthy, if Ronaldo Lopez can break out, if Charlie Morton has a young resurgence in his older years. Fried will kind of raise the floor for this Braves team. And Ronald Acuna, I didn't want to talk about it when it first happened, but it is something to keep in mind that he is having some lower body problems this offseason. So he may not get 73 stolen bases last year, but just to remind you what a crazy season he had in 2023. 337 batting average, 416 on base, 596 slug, 41 home runs, 106 RBIs out of the leadoff spot, 73 stolen bases. Video game numbers, one of the best players in baseball. And even if he doesn't run quite as much as he did last year, he still has 40-40 in his range of outcomes, which not many players can say. So I think the National League East as a whole, I would take all the teams to finish with less wins than they did in 2023. I think that the whole division is going to take a slight step back just based on injuries and production. But I do think that the East does have two playoff teams in it. So I have the Braves winning the division, obviously, and I think the Phillies will be a wild card team. Those are two very, very good teams that are scary to face in October. And now over to the NL Central, probably the most boring division to talk about in both leagues, but they still play ball and they will have a playoff team or two. I think the Pirates are going to finish in last place this year after a really fun first half of the season. They ended with a 76-86 record. They added a lot of pieces that I could see them selling later on this year. Aroldis Chapman, Rowdy Tellez, Martin Perez. They just signed Michael A. Taylor to a one-year deal, who got 21 home runs for the Twins last year. Yasmani Grandal to platoon with Henry Davis behind the plate. The storyline for them is, are they already sellers? And Paul Skeens watch. Paul Skeens in the spring breakout hitting 100 miles per hour, striking out Jackson Holliday. He is an absolute beast, the most hyped pitcher since Steven Strasburg. And if he comes up earlier than later this season, the Pirates are going to be a lot more fun to watch. But the players to watch currently on the Pirates are Mitch Keller, who got the extension this offseason, a 4.21 ERA, 105 ERA plus in 194 innings, 210 strikeouts, which was a 9.7 strikeout per nine, and a 3.80 FIP. So a little bit better than the raw ERA shows. And he's a guy that might not win a Cy Young, might not be an ace, but will give the Pirates really consistent innings. I think that the other question is, can Hayes, DeBron Hayes, Jack Sawinski, and Henry Davis take a step forward? All three of them showed potential in 2023, and all three of them were highly rated prospects when they came up, at least. I think those three players could make or break the Pirates season. I think that 2 out of 3 of them aren't going to end up having the season that we hope, and that's part of the reason that they're in last place. But the X factor for the Pirates in 2024 is O'Neal Cruz. The man is built in a lab. He only played 9 games last year due to a freak injury sliding into home plate. This guy has legitimate 30-30 upside. And I know the batting average isn't going to be super high, but he's going to lead the league in exit velocity. He's going to have a ton of highlights. And if he plays enough games this year, he will have an Ellie De La Cruz like following very shortly, because he is an absolute freak athlete that a lot of people can get behind and will love watching play. The Cincinnati Reds, speaking of Ellie De La Cruz, I have them finishing 4th this year. They were 82-80 last year. They were really fun for a chunk of the season. They added Jeimer Candelario, Nick Martinez, and Frankie Montas to their rotation, and Emilio Pagan to their bullpen. The storylines is this year is a long look at the future. They get to really finally have a full year sample size of what these players can do, other than Noelvi Marte. He's an idiot. The players to watch, to me in the rotation, Andrew Abbott was the one pitcher with an under 4 ERA last year, 3.87. He had a 1.18 ERA plus in 109 innings, 120 strikeouts, 9.9 strikeout per nine with a 4.20 FIP. He has the potential to be their best pitcher, and I think he is going to be important to the Reds building forward, because Nick Martinez and Frankie Montas are not going to win the division for them. Matt McLain last year in only 89 games, 290 batting average, 357 on base, 507 slug, 16 home runs, 14 stolen bases. Can he repeat that kind of power? He didn't have that kind of power on his prospect profile. If he can, as the Reds' everyday second baseman, I think he's going to be looked at as one of the best second basemen in all of baseball. But the X factor, it's also a Cruz, Ellie De La Cruz. Last year, he took the league by storm, but people didn't realize how much he fell off as a hitter. Ended with a 235 batting average, a 300 on base on the dot, 410 slugging, 13 home runs, 35 stolen bases in 98 games. If he plays the full season, he's going to steal over 40 bags. But will the hitting numbers be there? If the hitting numbers are there, the Reds could finish a heck of a lot higher than fourth place. But I don't know if he's going to be able to adjust. I have a feeling that he's going to be one of those names that we look at in a few years and we're like, wow, he was fun, but couldn't figure it out for the long haul. But if he does click altogether, he's going to be a pleasure to watch. The Cardinals, I have smack dab in the middle after picking them to win the division last year. They had a god-awful season, 71-91 record. They added Sonny Gray, Lance Lynn, and Kyle Gibson to the rotation, Kenyon Middleton to the bullpen, and veteran leadership in Matt Carpenter and Brandon Crawford to the lineup. The storyline is, did they improve their rotation enough to be competitive? That's a very fair question. And will some of these guys start to separate, the young guys? They have a lot of quadruple A players right now on their roster or coming up. And some of these guys have to separate because otherwise they're going to just have a log jam of guys and they're going to be trading Tyler O'Neill's away 1 year away from free agency for not very much. The players to watch and my X factor for the Cardinals this year is Miles Mikolas. He got the extension after an amazing 2022 where he made the All-Star team. In 2023, he posted 201 innings pitched, but in those innings, he got hit hard. 4.78 ERA, 91 ERA plus, a below average, 137 Ks, only 6 strikeouts per 9, 4.27 FIP. So he's a little bit better than what the overlying numbers said. And I do think that he will post innings, which will be important for this team. And if he can have an ERA in the low 4s, like his FIP was last year, that will be huge to raising the bar for this Cardinals team. Sonny Gray, obviously, you got to watch him. He was second in the AL Cy Young voting last year, led the AL in FIP with 283, 279 ERA, 154 ERA plus in 184 innings. He was basically a strikeout per inning guy, 183 strikeouts. He's a stud. And when he's not pitching in New York, he is a very good pitcher you want in your rotation. Paul Goldschmidt and Arenado, they're both future Hall of Famers. They both looked at as down years last year. They both batted in the 260s. They both had 300 on bases and 400 slugs, 25 plus home run power from each of them. They need to step back up into that 30 home run, 100 RBI range with closer to a 280 batting average. But I think that both of those guys can do that in any given season. So those two players, you're obviously going to watch them regardless of how the Cardinals are doing, but the success of the Cardinals is going to be on their back a lot. And those young players, will they separate? Jordan Walker was my pick for National League Rookie of the Year last year. And I think that he is going to really get an opportunity this year to show if he is all hype or all that. And him with Alec Burleson, Lars Nootbaar, Tommy Edman, Brandon Donovan, Nolan Gorman, they have so many guys. Mason Wynn might make the team. That it's going to be interesting to see who is the guy there and who ends up just being a guy who gets traded for a reliever in a few years. In second place, I have the Brewers, who won the division last year with a 92-70 record. They added Rhys Hoskins, Jacob Junis, Gary Sanchez. The storyline is, are they true sellers? Because they did trade Corbin Burns. They did lose Brandon Woodruff to injury. They did trade a few guys like Josh Hader, and Devin Williams is now out for 3 months with a fracture in his back. Are they true sellers? But the players to watch for them are their new ace, Freddie Peralta, who last year had a 3.86 ERA, 112 ERA plus in 165 innings. He struck out 200 batters, good for 11.4 strikeout per 9, had a 3.85 FIP. If Freddie Peralta can combine his control from last year with the stuff that he showed in 2021, he could get some Cy Young consideration. I think that he's going to be a big factor in why the Brewers could finish ahead of teams like the Cardinals and the Reds. And William Contreras is maybe the most underrated player in baseball. 289 batting average, 367 on base, 457 slug, 17 home runs. I don't know why the Braves let him go. He is a great defensive catcher, a great offensive catcher, and he is freaking young. The Brewers are very lucky to have him. So he is my X factor for the Brewers. I think that he's going to put his name on the map this year and be looked at as the number one player in that Brewers lineup, surrounded by Christian Yelich, Rhys Hoskins, and a lot of young guys that I'm excited to see which ones can click this year. And yep, by default, I have the Cubs winning the NL Central. They were 83-79 last year, just missed the postseason. They added Shota Imanaga, Michael Busch, and Hector Neris. And the storyline is, will they take the next step? They were so close last year. They brought back the majority of the core, and I think they will take that next step and make the postseason in 2024. Justin Steele was amazing last year, faded towards the end. 3.06 ERA. He finished with 146 ERA plus in 173 innings, 9.1 strikeout per nine guy, 3.02 FIP. If he can pitch in the low threes, low to mid threes, they're going to be very happy. And Cody Bellinger re-signed, 307 batting average, 356 on base, and a 522 slug last year, 26 home runs and 20 stolen bases. He was very good. Can he repeat that? I think he needs to with the contract he got to hit the open market and get that long-term security he wants. But the X factor to me is Shota Imanaga. In the entire World Baseball Classic last year, Shota Imanaga led the whole tournament in Stuff Plus. He has amazing stuff on the mound. And because of his smaller frame, the movement is even more deceptive to hitters. I think Shota Imanaga is going to be your National League Rookie of the Year. And to be honest, he is going to get some Cy Young consideration, I think, very early on. He is an amazing pitcher that I think the Cubs got at an amazing value. He gets to pitch in the NL Central against these offenses that have talent but aren't stacked top to bottom. And I'm very excited to watch Shota Imanaga pitch in 2024. I think he will be a big part of the reason why the Cubs get over the hump and win the division. The National League West. The wild, wild West. Torey Lovullo said it. I wish all the best players didn't keep coming to the West, because I don't want to talk about them way more than I do the other divisions, but they've been at the driver's seat all off season to get talked about. The Diamondbacks had one of the best off seasons. The Dodgers had a historic off season, and the Padres just made a big trade. But let's get into it. So I got the Rockies finishing in last place. Not a big shock to anybody. They didn't add a ton of interesting names this offseason. I think that the Rockies, they tried to get some guys like Dakota Hudson for the rotation. Maybe he can hit and be something for them. But in reality, the Colorado Rockies are just going to be around. They had a 59-103 record last year, their first season in franchise history with over 100 losses. I think they're going to be right around there again. But the player to watch for the Colorado Rockies is Nolan Jones. As a guy who, as a rookie last year, went 2020, has amazing pop. He can field first base as well as the outfield. He hit a moonshot in spring training the other day, and he could very quickly be the face of this franchise, where guys like Ryan McMahon and Brendan Rodgers have been around there for a while. Ezekiel Tovar is a young, exciting player, but doesn't quite have Nolan Jones' potential. Chris Bryant's there rotting away with his contract, not happy. Elias Diaz is coming off a career year. But Nolan Jones is the name to watch. He's the name to draft in fantasy if you want a Rockies bat. And I think that a sneaky guy is Sean Bouchard, their right fielder. He only has a cup of coffee in the major leagues. This is a guy that you just look at him and say, is he an everyday baseball player? They're going to give him the opportunity to be one this year, and in his short major league stint, he has a 166 career OPS plus. And that OPS plus is park adjusted. It doesn't give him credit for playing at Coors. It actually hurts him for playing at Coors. And he has a 166 career OPS plus. A name to keep a mind on if you're in deep fantasy leagues, if you need outfield help late, Sean Bouchard, he can hit. And it'll be interesting to see how he does over a larger sample because he only has, I think, 50 games in the major leagues in 2 seasons. In fourth place, I have the San Francisco Giants because they haven't signed Blake Snell. If they had signed Blake Snell, like I predicted them to, I would have them over the Padres. But the San Francisco Giants still had a pretty decent offseason. They added some really nice pitchers, obviously, but Jung-Ho Lee and Matt Chapman added to that lineup. Those are 2 guys that I think are going to really just raise the floor of this Giants offense. This is going to be a team that is good, but not great for the majority of the year. The fact that they let Brandon Crawford walk the way they did, to let Marco Luciano play, they're putting a lot of faith into their young players. And not that they shouldn't have some faith in these young players, Marco Luciano, Patrick Bailey. But I do think that the Giants as a whole are going to be in kind of a pinch with their team not going all in and spending money like they should have, I think, throwing money at Blake Snell. They're a team that could actually defend doing that. So the Giants, I have them finishing in fourth place. Logan Webb is a sneaky Cy Young guy every single year. I think that he doesn't have overpowering strikeout stuff, but can the Giants finish better than 79 and 83 like they did in 2023? Yes. Will they finish a lot better than that in this division? I don't think so. San Diego Padres, I have them in third place, mainly because of the trade-off there. Like I said, Blake Snell did not get signed by the Giants, and the Padres just went out there and traded for Dylan Cease. So the Padres rotation now is Yu Darvish, Joe Musgrove, Dylan Cease, Michael King, and Johnny Brito. Fifth starters are a revolving door in a lot of teams. That is understandable, but those first 4 have really awesome stuff. So I'm excited for the Padres. I think that they could be a sneaky bounce back after finishing 82 and 80 last year. They have playoff aspirations, and I will not shock me when they make the playoffs this year as the third team in the West. I think that the West is top heavy, but I do think the Padres have done enough now. Their lineup, Machado, Bogarts, Tatis, a loose Soto, but Campuzano can hit, Cronenworth can hit, and Jackson Merrill, who is my X factor for the San Diego Padres this year, their number 1 prospect. He is making the trip to Korea with the Padres, and he's looking to be their opening day center fielder. This is a guy who has all the tools, came up as a shortstop, and I think he is going to be a spark plug for this Padres team that outside of Hassan Kim doesn't have a lot of speed. I think he can end up hitting towards the top of that lineup in front of the Bogarts, Tatises, Machados, score a lot of runs, be a really fun player that I don't think enough people are talking about right now. So I have the Padres making the playoffs as the final wild card team. The Arizona Diamondbacks, I have them finishing second place, despite them arguably having a better offseason in terms of value than the Dodgers. I just said in terms of value, don't crucify me. The Arizona Diamondbacks finished with an 84-78 record last year, sneaked into the playoffs, went on a magical run, and they had an offseason, people. Eduardo Rodriguez added to their rotation. I was screaming from the heavens for them to trade for a Stroman Rodriguez type last season, last trade deadline. They ended up bringing in Eugenio Suarez from the Seattle Mariners to be their everyday third baseman instead of platooning Longoria with some young guys that can't hit. They signed Jock Peterson to platoon in the outfield for them. This team just flat out hits. They have a ton of speed. Corbin Carroll stole 54 bases as Rookie of the Year last year. He's going to get MVP consideration, I think, for the Diamondbacks this year. This is a team that can win 90 games, I think, in their sleep. And the Arizona Diamondbacks, top to bottom, are an amazing team. I talked about him as my NL breakout earlier in an episode, but Gabriel Moreno is my X factor. This is a guy who showed in the postseason why the Blue Jays messed up. And he is a guy that can not only call a game as a 24-year-old catcher, but he can really hit. And I think Gabriel Moreno is going to assert himself into that top 5 catcher conversation in 2024 as a big part of this Diamondbacks offense. Corbin Carroll, Ketel Marte, Christian Walker, they just got guys after guys after guys. And do not be shocked if Jordan Lawler ends up taking Geraldo Perdomo's job. I know Perdomo had a really good first half of the year last year, was a all-star snub to a lot of people at the beginning, but they have a really exciting player in Jordan Lawler coming up as well to add to this already fun team that had Gallen and Merrill Kelly at the top of that rotation. Paul Sewald and their improved bullpen is still almost intact. Saul Frank, all those guys. So the Diamondbacks are going to be a scary team. They're going to be a problem. The Los Angeles Dodgers, last but not least, they finished with 100 games, wins on the dot last year. And the rich got richer, people. They signed Shohei Ohtani. They signed Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the top hitter and the top pitcher on the free agent market. But they weren't done there. They traded for Tyler Glasnow. They signed James Paxton to help bridge some innings this year. They signed Teoscar Hernandez to improve upon their David Peralta platoon option. Gavin Lux is healthy. This team is a juggernaut. It is World Series or bust for the Los Angeles Dodgers. They will win the division. I'm not going to reveal yet until I make my AL predictions if they'll win the World Series. But they are an absolute monster. The fact that the top of their lineup is Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, that is video game scary. And I expect this offense to be the best in baseball. Max Muncy, Will Smith, Teoscar Hernandez, Jason Hayward, Gavin Lux, all those guys that hit behind the big three are going to have so much cushion because teams are not going to want to walk them and get that top 3 of the order closer to being up. So the Dodgers, my X factor for them is Tyler Glasnow, because Yamamoto, I understand he's the highest paid pitcher of all time. He hasn't looked great in the spring. He's going to give enough innings for the Dodgers to be happy with him in year 1. But to me, Tyler Glasnow has always had some of the best stuff in baseball. And if he can stay healthy enough to give the Dodgers 150-ish innings pitched, that's going to be such a weapon for them down the stretch as they wait for Kershaw to get healthy, as they wait for all these guys that they have coming back from injuries. Emmett Sheehan is going on the IL to begin the year. They're hoping that Dustin May can pitch at some point this year as well. Walker Buehler starting the year on the IL. These guys are all going to pitch innings for the Dodgers this year. But Tyler Glasnow, if he can give them a solid base to start the year, it's going to be a launching pad for the rest of this season. It's exciting to see Mookie Betts in the shortstop spot. I hope that is not the long-term solution. I talked about that last week. But the NL West, it runs through LA, and it has for many years now. It just looks a lot steeper now. So I appreciate you guys listening to my TED Talk through the divisions. I hope you enjoyed that deep dive. This episode is going to be one of the longer ones. But here at the Solo Shot Sports Podcast, we can throw it back down the third base line to this day in baseball history, to a moment or a player that just truly needs to be told and talked about in the history of this great game. Now, there was some injuries, which makes me think of Garrett Cole and some of the other injuries that we'll get into on the AL episode. There was some signings. There was some retirements, which we just saw a couple of great players in both baseball and football retire in the last couple of weeks. But to me, spring breakout has been a really cool addition to spring training this year. I love that they're having these spring breakout rosters and having prospects play against prospects. I think that's good for the game to let them know who these names of the future are to look out for. I think it's a really cool thing, and I know the Futures game does that, but this is a more readily available yearly thing. And on this date in 1956, in a spring training game, Roberto Clemente, the great one, hit two-run triples and also started a triple play from playing right field in a spring training game. Now, Roberto Clemente, he's called the great one. He is the best Puerto Rican player of all time and arguably the greatest right fielder of all time defensively. Roberto Clemente wasn't a known commodity in 1956. He was a rising star that was a bonus baby in the Dodger system that was lost to the Pirates. And he ended up having one of the truly great Major League Baseball careers, 3,000 hits on the dot. So whoever goes to the 3,000 hit club next will be greeted by Roberto Clemente. This is a guy who won an MVP, won batting titles, won 12 Gold Gloves, and was truly one of baseball's most iconic stars. Pittsburgh still loves him. The Puerto Rican community still loves him. The Latin American baseball community still loves and reps Roberto Clemente, who tragically obviously died in a plane crash trying to deliver supplies to a needy country. This is a guy who had the spring breakout, ended up in that 1956 season kind of showing people what he really was. And I think that Roberto Clemente, who in many ways was not an outspoken guy, he did it with his head down in a lot of ways. But in 1956, he really broke out, in my opinion. It was his first season hitting over 300. He hit 311. He had 169 hits, 30 doubles, 7 triples, and an OPS plus above league average. It took him a few more years until 1960, where he really hit his prime. But I think 1956, with the spring breakout performance that I just learned about looking into it, of the 2 triples and the triple play that he started, along with the fact that that was his first good season in the major leagues, I think is just cool to just think about that. He was 21 years old at the time. And we're talking about guys like Jackson Merrill for the San Diego Padres, who may struggle when he comes up, but give these young guys some time because they can grow into these truly great all-time players or even legendary icons like Roberto Clemente. So go check out Roberto Clemente's baseball reference page if you haven't done it in a while. This is a guy that has almost 100 career WAR, 240 career home runs, 317 career hitter, and truly an amazing all-time player. 4 batting titles, it's a heck of a lot. Now to wrap up the show, and I promise you this will be under an hour, we have the awards. And I already kind of dropped one because I saw where the timer was at. So my National League Rookie of the Year pick is Shota Imanaga. Now, Shota Imanaga, I talked about it. I think he's going to be looked at as the best value of the offseason, even if he doesn't win the award. But Shota Imanaga, he's not a young guy, but truly has game-breaking stuff. And the fact that the arm angle from being a shorter guy from the left side, I just think he is going to melt faces in the major leagues here in 2024 and win the National League Rookie of the Year. When it comes to the Cy Young and the MVP, Shohei Ohtani made things a lot more open in the AL by leaving it. No DH has ever won the MVP, and I don't think it's going to happen this year, especially being surrounded and literally bookended by 2 MVPs in Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. I made the prediction last year that Mookie Betts would win the National League MVP as a guy who I didn't know was going to play second base and shortstop. But to me, if Mookie Betts can hit 40-ish home runs as a shortstop next season, hitting leadoff, getting driven in consistently by Ohtani and Freeman, I don't see why he can't recreate his MVP level season from 2023 and win it here in 2024. So I'm doubling down. Mookie Betts is your 2024 National League MVP. I think with Acuna's lower body injury, he's not going to be able to put up quite the video game season that he did before. And I do think that if a Dodger is going to win the MVP during this magical season with this super team, it's going to be Mookie Betts. The Cy Young Award is tricky because there's a lot of pitchers that have moved out of the National League. There's a lot of injuries that have made teams suffer. And when you look across the league, there's a ton of really interesting guys who could win a Cy Young. But the name that I keep going back to when I think about a pitcher winning the Cy Young in the National League is a guy who plays for the best team in the East, who has been the betting favorite. He's been the number one pitcher in fantasy drafts. Spencer Strider has a third pitch, people. Look out. He is going to likely win his first Cy Young this year. This is a guy, 281 strikeouts last year. I talked about it. Truly elite strikeout upside. I think he can strike out over 300 batters this year. And if he does that with a low to mid threes ERA instead of a high threes like last year, I don't know who's going to beat that. So I'm going with Spencer Strider as my National League Cy Young, Mookie Betts as my National League MVP, Shota Imanaga as my National League Rookie of the Year. And as a Manager of the Year award, I have Mike Shildt making it for the San Diego Padres, which I mentioned. I have winning the last wild card spot. I think Mike Shildt with Dylan Cease, with this lineup, with a lot of bounce back potential, and Jackson Merrill as a spark plug at the top of it. I think the Padres are going to have a season where people remember why this team has such a high payroll, why this team is good. And from the bottom to the top, I have the Padres making the third wild card. I have the Phillies making the second wild card, and the Diamondbacks winning the first wild card. Division winners, I have the Braves, the Cubs, and the Dodgers. So National League Baseball, I packed as much as I could into this 48 going minute episode. It's going to be under 50 minutes when I wrap. I know I missed some transactions. I know I missed some players. I want to hear who you think are going to be the division playoff teams, award winners, X factors for teams that I might have missed in the comments below. I appreciate each and every one of you for spending part of your Saturday with me, checking this out. I will be recapping the American League in the same fashion next week and giving you my picks for that, as well as my World Series pick. You know who my NL playoff teams are. Can they beat my AL playoff teams? Stay tuned. For more baseball content, follow me on the app formerly known as Twitter at DominicMana44. And remember, if you like the show, leave a review, leave a comment, like, subscribe, and tell a friend. We'll see you next Solo Shot Saturday. Peace.